This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. During the age of social distancing, we're releasing episodes every day. Today's guest is Andrew Becker. As a drummer, Becker first turned heads as a member of Dischord band Medications. His explosive and dexterous style propelled the band into the stratosphere. For over 10 years, he's also released solo material under the Human Potential Moniker. His fourth album, I'm Glad You're Alive, was released in February. In addition to his career in music, Andrew's also an award-winning filmmaker. I spoke to him in Pasadena earlier this year before quarantine began. And now my conversation with Andrew Becker.
Well, my pop worked for the city of Wilmington when I was really young, till I was like 5 or 6. And then he started working in Philly.
Got it.
So he would commute back and forth every day, just 45 minutes each way or something like that.
What line of work was he in?
He worked for the city of Wilmington, the municipality, for a while. He also worked for the federal government under Carter. He worked for HUD for a little bit. And then he somehow got in, I don't know how he made this transition, but he got into finance, doing investment banking and stuff like that.
And he worked for a firm in Philly when he was doing
Yeah,
that?
well, the company that went through different iterations, but eventually became Citigroup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And was your mom working when you were growing up?
My parents split up when I was really, really young, but yeah, she did like secretarial work, and then eventually when I entered high school, I think she started like cleaning houses, and that became her primary job.
Did you split your time with your parents equally when you were growing up?
No. I mainly stayed with my pop. We would see my mom like Sundays, like every Sunday or every other Sunday, something like that. But yeah, for the most part, we grew up with my dad, and then my dad got remarried when I was like 5 to a woman that had 2 kids of her own. So yeah, then I became the youngest of four kids at that point.
Oh, because you have another sibling as well?
Yeah, I have an older sister and then 2 older step-siblings.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what kind of music was on when you were growing up in your house? Were your parents into music?
Yeah, my dad really was and still is. He played guitar in a band when he was growing up, like in high school, called the Spectrum 5, which was pretty groovy, for sure. They put out a 7-inch in like 1967 called All Psyched Out was the name of the song, which is, it's actually on YouTube. It's actually like pretty fucking good song. So he was always like...
Were they on a label and everything back then?
I don't know what a label meant. Like, I'm sure there were like myriad like local like Philly labels or whatever, like somebody put it out.
Yeah.
I don't know who. But they had like, a top 20 hit in like the Philly market or whatever, which was, awesome for him. And yeah, so when I was growing up, like, like my pop's really into like, the Zombies and the Beatles and like Paul Revere and the Raiders and like Mitch Ryder and stuff like that. Sort of like blue-eyed soul, you know what I mean? Like he was really into that stuff. And then like we had a piano, so he would like play piano pretty often. Like every time before we left the house to do anything, he would have to play Moonlight Sonata.
It was like a compulsion.
Yeah, kind of. It was like, yeah. It's like, bro, I'm just trying to get this ice cream cone.
Gotta get to school.
Come on.
Every time you left the house?
This is my memory. I think it's just like every time I wanted to like go, like when I was 5, I was like, can I just get this ice cream cone, just get off the fucking piano?
So if I were to play Moonlight Sonata on my record player right now,
Yeah.
what would happen?
I'd just start crying. No. But yeah, so it was like, and then, I became interested, like, in, I naturally gravitated towards music when I was really young. So I had, I was asking my father to buy me records when I was like 3 and 4, like Jay Giles Band records and Clash records and shit. Like,
did you have your own record player?
I did. Yeah, like a little Fisher Price.
That's what I had. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The tan Fisher Price.
Yep, exactly.
When did it feel more like something you could participate in rather than consume?
I don't even remember like being cognizant of that. I think I felt like it was always something I participated in. Like,
so did you start playing piano first because you had a piano at the house, or how did you start participating? Did you sing or?
No, I mean, I think probably much like many drummers, they just start banging on shit and their parents like, well, I guess they like playing drums, and that's what I was doing when I was really young. And then I got like, a little kit when I was like 3 or something and just started pummeling it. And also I was taking piano lessons when I was like 5. But yeah, as far as I remember, I was always just sort of like, I would have like, I would like cajole my friends into coming over and like performing concerts with me and stuff. And I was like 4. So it always felt like something that I was doing or participating in to some degree. You know what I mean?
When was your first band?
Medications.
Okay, so it was like always part of your life, but you weren't like actively playing shows and playing in bands until you started playing with Medications, those guys.
Yeah, because it was just growing up in Delaware.
There isn't like a known rock scene in Delaware, but I don't know. I don't want to offend anybody. Maybe there is.
I mean, there were like bands when I was in high school, like hardcore bands that I liked that were from Wilmington.
Are there any famous bands
George
from any
Thorogood?
era? Okay, George Thorogood's from Delaware.
Correct. There's this band called Zen Gorilla. You heard them? They're on Sub Pop.
Right.
They were from Newark, Delaware, where I went to college. The label Jade Tree was based in Delaware.
That's right, yeah.
I can't really think of any other. The Spinto Band. You heard the Spinto Band?
I don't know. No.
Actually, pretty good pop band. Yeah, so there wasn't like a huge scene in Delaware, and I was pretty like deliberate about people I wanted to play with, and I would like jam with people, but there was never like a band I wanted to form until I got to DC.
How did you wind up in DC?
I got an internship after I graduated college.
So you went to college in Delaware.
Yeah.
And what did you study?
History.
Okay. You went to school for history, then you got an internship. Where in DC?
It was a foreign policy think tank. And, it was like a fucking joke. I basically just like got this old dude who wore bow ties laundry every day. And then it was over in like 3 months and didn't really go anywhere. And then around that time is when I hooked up with Devin Ocampo. Right.
And I should say that previous to that, I was playing with Devin.
You were, yeah.
And there was a tumultuous time.
Was it? How so?
It was. It was just, it was an emotionally fraught relationship at the time.
Between you and Devin?
Between me and Devin, and also there was the bass player in the band, Jake.
Yeah.
It was just a strange thing, and the musical chemistry wasn't great. And then I think perhaps because we were such close friends in other ways, it complicated things. But anyway, I had left DC, and then I know that they were searching for a drummer for a few months at least. And then how did you find these guys?
In the city paper.
Oh, so they put an ad in the city paper.
Yeah, and they advertise, dudes from Farragut or whatever, and I was like, dope. They're on Dischord, like that's great, and I like that band, so I hit them up, and yeah, we just sort of hit it off immediately. And I remember them playing the recordings they made with you, and I was like, I can't do that.
I don't even remember what I did.
It was very like technically precise. Sort of like akin to what that music sort of called for at that time, you know. But I just remember thinking, I can't fucking play like that. Like, that was my first band experience, really.
So you joined up with Devin, and Jake was still part of it.
Jake was still the band, yeah.
And then Chad Moulter, who's been on this show and was the drummer of Faircat, moved to bass and joined Medications as the bassist.
Yeah, that was after, like, we played a couple of shows with Jake, and then I think he ended up moving to New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then how would you describe the band dynamic in Medications? And what was your creative role in the band?
I mean, I think it's safe to say that the band, for all intents and purposes, was Devin's. You know, he was the primary songwriter and, you know, architect. I think Chad moved into more of a songwriting role as the band progressed.
And Chad and Devin had been playing together for 30 years at that point or something.
Something crazy. And then, you know, I was the drummer. That was pretty much like my role. I think I would try to voice suggestions. I think eventually over time, I tried to assert myself more because I wanted to do more sort of adventurous things musically and, you know, try different things, go different directions. And I think sometimes I probably asserted myself in the wrong way. and that sort of just led to the eventual dissolution. And I'd moved to New York after a couple of years. So, I mean,
how long was that band active? About 4 years?
I was in that band for 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah, from 2002 to 2007, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, being that it was your first band, you know, how do you feel like it changed you as a person to have that experience?
Well, the experience in total, I think, is profoundly like transformative. Like, I was 21 or 22 when I joined the band, and within 5 years, I had like traveled the world playing music in Japan and Europe and Brazil and the United States, and like those are just really, you know, profound experiences to have, like especially at that age. You're seeing so much of the world and meeting so many like interesting different people, and also like, you know, those things also help to inform, you know, your decisions moving forward, like from music. You know, after a point, after 5 years, I was sort of like, well, I can either keep doing this and be destitute my entire life, or try to find something else to do and actually like have skills and a career, you know what I mean? Instead of just sleeping on floors for months out of the year.
Did that seem like a foregone conclusion? Like playing music equals sleeping on floors, or playing?
It did after 5 years of doing, being in that type of band. It's like, obviously that band's not going to ever, like, they're whatever, you know, it's not going to be a career. You know what I mean? It's not going to sustain my lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Was that your hope initially?
I think initially it was, but like, what did I know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was also, I mean, a very like transitional period in the music industry where
people stopped buying records over that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all sort of shared that sort of quixotic hope that we would be able to like make money doing it, and then eventually it's like, no, can't do that. It's absurd.
Some people do it. I don't know. So what was your next step? You moved to New York, and what was the plan?
I moved to New York and decided I was going to be a film editor, which I just moved to New York and got jobs working on documentaries as like an assistant editor, and eventually that sort of like morphed into a career like producing and directing television, and then into like directing my own films and stuff like that.
So what television were you producing and directing?
Not good ones. Like bad cable shows. You know, it was a good way to make a good grip of cash for like 3 months at a time, and then I could sort of take a month or two off, play music, go on tour, like write a record or whatever, and then come back. And, you know, it was creatively fulfilling enough.
And you're learning a new skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I did that I still do it occasionally to make money.
You were editing, you were producing, you're directing some TV, and then you were also making records. So you kind of started veering into doing your own thing, finding your own creative voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the thing with me and Medication's parting ways was I just wanted to do something different, and I would sometimes I just bring like a synthesizer into practice and be like, let's fuck around with this. And I think those dudes were like, I don't think they were so stoked on that notion. And I got I think when I first started playing in that band, I was just so stoked to be playing drums in a band and just like hitting them fucking hard and like playing fast and like a bazillion fills. And then like at the end of that band, I was like, I don't ever want to play a fill ever again in my entire life. Like, I hate this. And so when I moved to New York, I started band Screens, which we shared the practice space with you guys.
That's right. With Dan and those guys.
Yeah. And that was more, just a different project altogether than Medications was, and allowed me to sort of lay back and not bludgeon the song to death all the time.
And around that same time, you started your own record label, too.
Yeah, I put out my friend Lynn's record, this band called The Rude Staircase, Eldris Skell's The Rude Staircase, which I still think is a phenomenally weird and beautiful, fucking awesome record. And put out the Screens record, put a couple other records out, and then eventually put up my own solo stuff out.
When did you make your first solo record?
Shortly after, like, the demise of Screens, like, Screens broke up in 2011, basically right before, like, we were going to put the record out. The record was done. And then our singer left, and I was like, it was pretty devastating because I thought that band was good. I think the record still holds up. I think the record's really cool. And I was just like, fuck, dude. I ended up putting the record out anyway. Sort of at that point, I was like, I don't ever want to have to rely on anybody else to succeed in any, like, project that I'm doing. Like, because people will let you down. And if I don't have to rely on anybody else and I can do it all myself, then, like, why would I do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've gone through phases where I've adopted that posture too, but I think ultimately you always have to rely on other people in some capacity or another. In
some capacity, yes, but not in that capacity. Like,
as far as actually the creative process, you wanted to make that a self-contained thing.
Yeah.
And
for
so did it feel scary to make a statement of your own and to be the arbiter of what was working and what wasn't working and all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if it was scary so much as it was just weird. Like, I didn't know, like, I'd never played another instrument before in my life, really. Like, I just played drum. I never tried to play guitar. I never tried to sing. Like, that was the weirdest thing. Like, just recording demos and, like, trying to like just hearing myself sing for the first time was like,
how did it make you feel?
Embarrassed for myself. And I was like alone in this house in the woods in New York, and nobody was around. And it was hard. It was like embarrassing for myself. I was like, what is it? Like, because I didn't know what it really sounded like. I didn't know what my voice was. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I think I'm still finding it to an extent. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really know what was going to happen when I like picked up a guitar and started fucking around, and I didn't know. Like,
how did it feel on a visceral level?
It felt great because it was something that I'd always wanted to do, and I played a pretty like secondary role in Medications, and then Screens. Dan, who was like our keyboard player, and I did a lot of like the structuring of the songs, and that felt good. And I was confident that I could like structure stuff and make something, like marginally compelling. And then, yeah, it felt great to just like unleash myself and just do whatever the fuck I wanted, And
then around that time, you also started directing your own films too.
Yeah. In 2013, started making my first doc, which took like 4 years, shooting on and off for 4 years, and then editing and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was like, yeah, it was a really, creatively fulfilling period for sure, because I was basically just doing all these things, essentially like on my own.
And you had kind of written off the notion that you could make a living from doing those things. So that alleviates some of the pressure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I sort of had a hope that doing, documentary films would maybe provide me with some income, but that was also ridiculous.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't count it out. It seems like it's a golden age for documentary.
It is, sure.
Stuff.
It is. It's just, licensing those things to streaming services is the value isn't what it used to be, for sure.
Because there's so many of them. There's a glut of quote unquote content.
Yeah, absolutely. And then plus, like, you get distribution, and if you have a theatrical release, then like there are all these promotional costs to recoup, and we did this doc Santo Ion. It's basically just like me and my buddy did everything. Did a Kickstarter and just paid for most of it ourselves. But like, yeah, at the end of the day, we're not going to see any of that money ever again. But which is, fine, because I think the work holds up, and I think it's a good film. It's a challenging industry, for sure.
So tell me about what's going on with you right now. You just put out a record last month.
Correct, yeah.
Are you going to play shows around it, tour?
No, that's something that, well, I guess you're doing it, but like, I don't know, it would take a monumental amount of resources and like manpower. And I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of my friends are just old and have kids and shit, and they're like not, don't have a lot of time to devote to something that isn't necessarily theirs.
Oh, you mean potential people to play with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it would just be difficult. I would like to at some point. It's certainly like a challenge I would like to undertake, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I'm pretty content with like making records right now.
So what's your day-to-day like right now? Like, what are you doing aside from making records? Like, what's your equivalent of being a film editor now? Well,
I'm actually starting a new job at the end of this month. That's editing a feature doc. And I guess that starts in like 2 weeks. So yeah, in the meantime, I've made a few videos for the record and stuff like that. And yeah, I'll have this editing job, probably be like 3 or 4 months, and have some other projects in the works, a series that I'm developing that we shot in Italy last year. But all these things like take a lot of time to pitch and get people to pay attention, and so yeah, everything just takes a lot longer than it feels like it should.
What do you think about the most throughout the day?
Well, I mean, lately it's general anxiety about where my next job is going to come from, usually, which has been quelled recently with this job I just got. That generally occupies a lot of my mind space, for sure.
What do you care about the most right now?
That's a good question. I don't know, like friends and family, I think, really. Just trying to be like a better brother and son and friend, that's sort of something I am trying to be cognizant of recently.
You seem like you're more even-keeled than when I first met you, which...
Oh, I'm sure that's absolutely true.
Which I'm sure is the case for most people that have known each other since they were 23 or whatever,
yeah.
But
how do you mean even-keeled?
Well, you seem like more well-adjusted and like more happy.
That's 100% true, for sure.
How did that happen?
I mean, just getting older, man. Like, having experiences and going through fucking hard times, and like, especially like I think like late 30s. Like for me, at least, I feel like I've really grown up. It sounds dumb to say, but like matured a lot. And just like, I don't know, I feel like I have more like empathy and just like trying to shed a lot of like the bullshit that you carry when you're younger, like, fucking ego and like being judgmental and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And lots of that stuff I've found in my own situation comes from an underlying insecurity or another underlying
100%.
problem.
Yeah, totally.
But what would you, if you could spend 5 minutes with 23-year-old Andy, what advice would you give him?
I don't know. Like, I often think about like things I would do differently, and I don't think I would do anything differently, to be honest. Even like, the struggles I've had in life, I think, have been, even though like some of them were really hard, I think ultimately they've proven beneficial because I think they've made me, I don't know, more sort of in tune and like, I don't know, able to communicate with people a little better, I think, understand people a little better.
What about the way that you communicate with yourself? How has that changed?
I'm trying to change it. I'm usually terribly hard on myself, though I sort of consider that a good thing in ways because I'm like slightly obsessive and can be perfectionist, but I think that informs like, I would hope that it informs like the quality of the work, like the films and stuff that I do, and like, when I'm working, like I try to be very meticulous, and that part, like fear of failure and things like that, I think really motivate me, and so that really hasn't changed.
Okay. Well, but you said you're trying to change it. Why?
Well, I'm trying to be more forgiving with myself because I realize that sometimes it doesn't behoove you to beat yourself up all the time about stuff, especially when it comes to like relationships and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, some really good advice that someone gave me is think about the way you talk to yourself, and is that the way you would talk to a friend if you were trying to motivate a friend to do something?
Yeah, absolutely not.
You know what I mean?
Because I'm basically just verbally berating myself all day. So.
And I think that I mean, lots of people do that, and it can be productive up to a certain point, but it also can limit what you're able to do after a certain point.
Yeah.
Because if there's an underlying belief that you're not good enough, then it's harder to put your ideas out there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Although you seem to be putting your ideas out there.
I am. Yeah, for better or worse. Yeah.
Well, for better, right? That's why.
Better for me. I mean, that's whether anybody else likes it.
Well, that's all you can control. You can't control how other people are going to be affected by something that you put out there, right?
That is true.
Closing thoughts? Any questions for me?
Sure. What are you up to? What are you working on?
I just finished an album that's coming out in May, and I'm going to play some shows for that. And then I compose lots of music for film and TV stuff.
Nice.
So that's what I'm kind of up to these days.
Cool, man.
I'm living out here in Pasadena.
Yeah, dude, that's suburban life.
Trying to be nicer to myself.
Yeah. Who are you putting that record out yourself?
No, actually, it's getting put out by Decca.
Really?
Yeah.
How's that?
Well, Decca is owned by Universal now, and they initially got in touch with me because they were interested in putting out some scores that I've made for various shows and movies. And then they heard my album and were interested in putting it out. And I thought it would be great to kind of draw a through line between my record and stuff that was put out on Decca 50 years ago that was really influential to me, like the Zombies.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how it happened.
Wow.
Kind of a weird LA turn of events.
Yeah. That's amazing, dude. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But so, wait, any closing thoughts?
In general?
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to talk about? All right.
I'm not very good at speaking about myself like extemporaneously, so if you have any more questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, Andy, it's been great reconnecting with you. We knew each other briefly in DC and in New York, and I'm glad that you're out here in LA now, and it's been great catching up. Yeah. Thanks for being part of the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. Appreciate it.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.